feels like it's time to say welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and it's great to have you. We only ever have 3 rules at any Passle CMO Series event. Number 1, we ask you to try and make it interactive, ask questions, give your own thoughts, opinions as well. Number 2, hopefully you all network with each other. So there's some of the finest minds in professional services, BD and marketing across the UK in the room today. So if you see someone stood on their own, go and say hi, introduce yourselves, and hopefully you can make connections and see something valuable together. And then finally, we hope when you come to one of these events that you'll learn just at least one little nugget of information. So something you can go back to the office with tomorrow or on Monday morning and go and implement at your own firm's end as well. So that's me for now. I'm going to say a few words at the very end. But I wanted to welcome, we have brilliant panelists here today. We've got James Davidge, we've got Peter Skinner, we've got Sadie Barron, and we've got Barney O'Kelly. So thank you so much to them for coming today. And I'm going to hand you over to the very capable hands of our moderator today from Passle, Mr. Will Peake.
Thank you very much, Connor. One last introduction you forgot, which is James's hair, which I know Peter is very envious of, and so am I.
Why don't you start?
I know. Okay. Carry on.
Don't take photos of it.
We weren't going to go in size order, that was going to be worse. I was going to start actually just by setting the scene, because I was doing a bit of research just on the subject of cross-selling, which is why everyone's here, why we've got this brilliant panel. But I was just having a look back. It's obviously something that is not just relevant in professional services. It's something that every industry struggles with, is trying to do. And I was just looking back at articles, just quickly read you a quote from one of them. At the mention of cross-selling, partners everywhere nod enthusiastically but cannot hide their blushes. More often than not, a firm's largest clients are those with its most underexploited in terms of fee terms. Clients with a range of legal needs and with money to spend increasingly expect to deal with a number of different lawyers in each distinct area of need. Now, that was an article from the Law Society Gazette back in 1994. So things haven't really changed too much. Without sounding like Les Dennis, we did a recent survey, and the survey said, we interviewed 150 senior BD and marketing folk, US and UK. One of the big things that we found was that 84% believe that their firms are actually missing out on revenue. And that's normally, as a result of cross-selling opportunities they're not doing. The big thing, I think Connor's going to come onto it as well, and we'll probably mention it in some of the barriers. The biggest 2 things are trust and awareness. They're the big problems in law firms. I'm sure some of the guys will talk about some of the other areas as well. But without further ado, I was going to start with the first question. I don't know who I'm going to pick on first, and it's lucky I've got these questions because these guys can't remember what the questions are apparently. So I'm going to we'll start with you, James. If you could share your sort of current situation, maybe tell us a bit at Taylor Wessing what you guys are doing. And you've got quite an interesting job title that not many people have probably got at their firms as well, Head of Origination.
Yeah, and my wife calls it orienteering. So when we did our mortgage application, that's what she told the mortgage broker, which is not what the job is. But I interviewed for the head of clients. I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago when Mike Beswick moved up to the CMO role. And I sort of said, well, really, I think the main core or challenge of our business and all businesses really is a case of we're not really originating enough work, and that's from the existing client base because we don't have that spread that is really important, as you've just covered, but also going out and sort of hunting and sort of asking for work. And I've seen US firms and US lawyers in action where they go, hey, I'm Steve and I'd love to work on your next Series B funding, and you wouldn't see that from a British lawyer because they're petrified of it. So going through the interview, our managing partner said, so when you're head of origination, that's what you'll be focused on. So it's all basically just around shaking trees and sort of lots and lots of different nudges to try and get more out of our partners. Because, I mean, 1, it's called business development, so we're, as a role, supposed to be developing the business. 2, it's a partnership, so we need to actually sort of start working together and be a bit more switched on to it. So I'm sort of chief botherer, to a degree, but it sounds better when you call it origination. But it's just asking a lot more difficult questions and saying, well, why haven't we asked that question? And just keep pushing it and keep pushing it. And our managing partner and the board have made cross-sell really, really key to the strategy to say, well, we are better together, and there is a lot more to sort of be uncovered if we actually work more cohesively together, because every client has people, has IP, has property. So let's actually sort of really push on to why we are a full service firm. Otherwise we'd just be a boutique. So those are sort of the core things that are really focused on, really. So that's where the title came from, but also what my main focus is, just to sort of annoy people until they finally introduce clients to any of their colleagues.
And Barney, from your side, obviously switching from a 1,200 person law firm, roughly, over to Alex Partners, big consultancy. Priority levels in terms of cross-selling, what does that look like at Alex Partners?
Well, I mean, in consulting, even more so than in law, the BD and the sales side of things tends to sit with the client-facing teams. And I often say this, is professional services remains committed to an amateur sales force, right? So it's not a natural muscle that people tend to have. We're also problem solvers. Alex Partners are supreme problem solvers. Absent a problem, we're really not that comfortable at knowing what to do. So the notion of cross-selling and expanding work is a muscle we're developing. And similarly so, we tend to react to what's going on in the market much more than trying to stimulate the market around what we can do. So we get a call, we solve a problem, we move on to the next problem. So you've got this combination of a sort of built-in mindset and a transactional mentality that means this notion of focusing on an account, strategically expanding it, and frankly investing the time and effort required to do it. And there are others in our field who are far better at it because they give people the time and space to build out an account, which then at least will bring in other people who wouldn't necessarily find a way to farm that particular organisation. So it's a work in progress for us.
But it is, quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, psychologically, we're very similar to lawyers in terms of mindset. Professional services people are of a type. I think there's a fragility there that precludes a degree of cross-selling. There's a nervousness around introducing colleagues to precious clients. Will they make me look bad because they're worse than me or better than me? You know, all of these interpersonal dynamics are pretty critical. So we're not that much different, really. We're just probably a little less advanced than law firms when it comes to BD as a function.
Right, good. That's interesting. Sadie, you're about to go back into the world of law again.
Yeah, I am.
What's your sort of take on it? And have you got, knowing that you're going into it, is cross-selling something that is going to be a priority for you?
Look, I don't think there's a law firm out there that it's not a priority for, is there? Yeah. It's a competitive market for all of us. We're all under pressure. There's too many law firms, aren't there? Too many of us, really, I guess. It's a bit controversial, I suppose. But a few empty seats, you're right, yeah. But is there enough work to go around? And the answer is probably no. Not to keep growing at the pace that law firms have been used to growing at, and then it puts pressure down, doesn't it, into the business. I don't know how many of us have had that conversation. Where's the growth going to come from, Sadie? Like, I'm going to solve it all in one hit. But, you know, I've just literally, I think this is working day 9 at TLT, and the firm is very impressive in terms of the growth that it's already achieved. But what I'm really interested in is their approach to client engagement. They've got, for quite a small firm, they've got quite a big team wholly dedicated to this area of cross-selling. And I think key account management, client engagement, whatever you want to call it, if you boil it down, it kind of roughly falls into growing the client and defending the client, maintaining and defending the client relationship. So I do think that we will continue to invest in client engagement. I have one of the team is sat here, so she can take it back and report back what Sadie said. But you know, I only see more investment in that area. Because it's how I don't. Connor, where's my quote today? I'm really disappointed that my quote isn't up there yet. Is it coming later? All right, but you know, come on, guys. It is the cheapest, easiest, and fastest way to grow revenue. You are pushing out open doors. That's what I mean by that quote, by the way. You know, there should be less barriers than going out and trying to win entirely new accounts. But how many of us struggle with the idea that we've got to leap around for this fabulous potential opportunity, and when you dig in, it's £10,000 worth of work, and yet they're not putting that effort into growing a £2 million client. So, yeah, important. Can't see it going away. I think it's only going to increase in importance.
And Peter, from your side, we're obviously speaking to many people in the market, and we often, when we talk about cross-selling and how we can maybe help solve it with certain things that, again, we'll come on to, some of the smaller mid-sized firms, they sort of say, well, yeah, we understand it if you're in multiple locations around the world and you've got over 1,000 lawyers. At Wedlake Bell, you haven't got that. You've got one site in London. You've got big aspirations as a firm. What's the big priority in cross-selling? Is it the same as big firms? And
it has to be the same. I mean, did you say 83% or 84% of people said they think they're missing out on something? I think the other 16% don't know what they're missing out. Frankly, I think we're all missing out. I think everybody is missing out on cross-selling opportunities and growing the business. So I've been at Wedlake Bell for pushing 3 years now, and I've done 30 years of marketing and BD. Hence the lack of hair and increased weight. And walking into Wedlake Bell from my previous firm, which was BCLP, so 12 years there, big firm. And walking into firm, Wedlake Bell has been incredibly successful. It is as you say, it's a smaller firm, it's about 80 partners, only about 60, 70 million pound revenue. And the firm has been incredibly successful through just doing what it did. Through surviving is probably a bit strong, but just being what it was. I was the firm's first CMO, never had one of me before. There were 4 colouring in people, inverted commas. But other than that, to have proper marketing and BD and the experience come in has been a complete sea change. So in 3 years, I've grown the team from 4 people to now 11, which doesn't seem like a lot, but for a firm of that size, to have 11 people in marketing BD is a big shift. And the reason that I think is important is because the reason we've made that change is because the firm has bought into it and has recognised it. I think if the leadership of a business doesn't recognise it and buy into it, you're hiding to nothing. I think that actually a lot of what we will probably find ourselves talking about soon is about potentially behaviour change. We talk about trust, we talk about cross-selling and talk about account management. All of what we do day to day is about growing the business, but none of it is possible unless there's trust in the business and you work as one. And we will undoubtedly talk about the difference between my client and a firm client, because I think that is the root cause of what doesn't succeed and the root cause of what does succeed.
how does it work in practice? I'll come to all of you, but I mean, we all know it's hard. The theory's great, it should work, your quote's bang on, you know, it should be the easiest, fastest way to grow revenue. It's just that it's very hard to do. So do you see it being in strategy? Should it be led from the top? Should it be sort of managing partner? Should it be marketing and BD that grab hold of it and push that strategy, or is it a mixture of both? I'll come to you, Sadie, in your experience from Reed Smith. And
I've maintained for many years it has to be part of comp. I think the minute you put it as part of comp, then you have a behavioural change, because basically partners, and sorry if there's any in the room, care about two things: how much they earn and what people say about them. End of. Maybe how many kids they've got and how many yachts and Ferraris as well, I don't know. But largely, if you can get the mindset in and measure it in some way, and I actually don't think it has to be a percentage kind of formula type stuff, but it needs to be a conversation that happens around compensation to make partners understand that it is in the firm's interest to grow their client relationships and institutionalise them, and not enough attention is paid to that. And I think, like I say, day 9 at TLT, and I think I've mentioned it about 4 times already, that it needs to be part of that conversation. So that's where I think it starts.
Could I just add to that? So I sit on the board, but that's a good thing or a bad thing. Discuss another issue. We sit at board meetings and we have a standing agenda item in a board meeting, which is lateral hires. What do we talk about lateral hires? We want the lateral hire to come with a book of business. Right? So we want them to walk in with a book of business. We then want them to arrive at the firm. We then want them to share those clients with the rest of the firm, therefore making that what was once portable book of business less portable. So we talk about comp, and we talk about structures, and we talk about what we're asking of lateral hires to come in. We're saying, come in as a lateral hire, share your firm, and then, by the way, when you want to go, we've made it really, really difficult for you to go, because the touch points that we now have into this client have made it so that when you leave, said client doesn't want to go anywhere else. So comp, structures, how you build relationship, how you build cross-selling and the whole remuneration and how people are rewarded and how you sell it is so key to whether this is going to succeed or not. I haven't got the answer to what that's like yet. You try and talk about comp and changing comp. I don't know whether you've had a go, Sadie. It's, you've had a go. It's so challenging because I'm sat in the board meetings talking about laterals and saying, yeah, let's get them in and let's get that spread. And I've got partners sat in that room going, I don't want to share my client because when I want to go, then I want to keep my book of business. It's really, really challenging.
It's interesting you mentioned the lateral hires, because I was on a call yesterday with an American firm, and I mentioned to you earlier, they actually, when they get lateral hires in, they put a spotlight on that lateral hire, and they do exactly that. They say, oh, this is the new lateral hire we've got over, they're brilliant, they've got all this book of business and blah, 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 but they don't do anything the other way. They don't do the awareness piece, which is actually tell that lateral hire what's available at the rest of the firm as well. We're full service, we can do this, we can do that, because they don't know that necessarily. What do you do at Taylor Wessing on this side?
I think we've got a client investment program for hero clients. So there's sort of 10, 15 clients that have client relationship managers, a client team. They get extra budget. They get a slight deduction on chargeable hours. So that's for sort of the top 10 heroes. But all sector and practice, BD people and partners are expected to sort of lead from the front. But also we do huge amounts of internal comms to sort of highlight and champion those that do it right, because also it's a partnership, so you get it to work for you. So that where there's a partner who's the head of a client that's about 10 million quid, but it started off as a £300,000 client back in 2005, and from consistently always saying, who can I introduce you to, who can I do these things, so we keep telling his story, and it probably gets more elaborate every single time, but the retainer's over 12 or 15 million now, I think it is. But it's just because he keeps doing it, but then other people start leaning into it as well. So you've got to just, it's a behavioural change that has taken, for this client as an example, 15 years, but you have to just keep chipping away. And if you've got 15 different people at any given time saying, have you thought about introducing this person, that person, then eventually people either just succumb, and the people that, so just out of just sheer desperation, but slowly but surely, the people that don't do it, sort of that group gets smaller, smaller, smaller. So, and it's just consistent doing it all the time from multiple different channels, I think. It still takes forever, and we've been working on trying to fix the comp. We're in our fourth phase of slowly changing it until people haven't realised that we've gone this far. And there's lots of other things that we're slowly changing. But I think it's just, you've got to just keep at it, and you'll start to see the differences. But it's not going to be, oh, last year we've doubled our revenue because we started cross-selling, well done everyone. Because unfortunately that isn't how it works.
There's no one silver bullet, it's keep chipping away. How do you see it, Barney?
This is where consulting is a bit different, because we can sell into lots of different parts of an organisation, but that, you know, it's not the case that you've done a piece of risk work in a client and then they're going to buy supply chain work off you. You can't, there's not the same, you're not entitled to that work. It's almost a new sale altogether into a whole different structure in the firm. So I look after our consulting service lines. So a big part for us is how do our industry facing teams pull us through into their clients. And there's inevitably tension there, because clients have only got 2 or 3 really pressing things that they can deal with at any one time, and you might be involved in a service that could be 4th, 5th, 6th on their list. So it's set up for frustration. I think where we've done it best as a firm is in the private equity space, and actually we do a lot of work through referrals from law firms as well. So we have a pretty clear idea about the law firms we want to know us and want to sort of bring us in on a restructuring piece of work or an insolvency piece of work. But these are very referral based relationships, and they still perpetuate the transactional mindset. Like, we use you for this over and over again, and to try and expand into getting them to use us for something else is really, really hard. So it is always a delicate balancing act. I think the number one thing that we never really talk about when it comes to cross-selling is, if your colleagues don't like you, they won't cross-sell you. Right? It doesn't matter what structures, what processes, what comp. If your colleague thinks you're a dick, they're not going to introduce you to their client. And we don't address that enough. And it's a very difficult thing to say. You know, no one will. I'm really good at what I do. Yeah, but you're a dick, and we don't want to introduce you to the client. And that's a problem. And sometimes on my less charitable days, I might say that in the organisation, because it becomes a real tension. So it's a very difficult cocktail to make work for us. We've made good grounds, as I say, PE is good, corporates for us is the next one, but that takes a lot of time, and most cases there's an incumbent in there who's bigger than us, been doing it longer, so you've not only got to invest the time and energy to build a relationship, you've got to invest the right strategies to unseat somebody who's been sat in an office in that building for 15 years, and then expand from there.
Just to build on that as well, there's no consequences as well for not using your colleague who's a dick in the law firms. As far as I've ever worked out, literally nothing gets said, and I'm always really surprised at that there isn't even a conversation perhaps at practice group lead or sector lead or wherever, just to say, why did you take that piece of work outside the firm? And they know it's happening, but it just doesn't get addressed because nothing happens if they make that choice, because their client relationships are absolute king and they own them and they won't do anything to compromise them. And that's their defence the whole time. And I actually think, again, if the firm would just sort of say, well, you know, no, we're going to, that's a little tiny grey mark against you because, you know, you're not actually using your colleagues, that might go a long way to just start to change behaviours.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, and sometimes that's also because you don't necessarily have the right person, because you have a technically excellent person, but they are a dick. But actually, then they're not the right. Everyone's got to say dick at least once on the panel now. But I've lost my train of thought as well now. But
You were talking about
if
dicks.
people, if people aren't referring work to Steve or whoever, have you got the right person? Because we're very good at lateraling people in and new shiny stuff, same with clients, new shiny stuff, but are we very good at exiting the bad stuff out, which we're not? And that's hard conversations that nobody really wants to have because however many partners voted them in at any given time as well. So I think it's also pushing to have, on the consistent point I said about earlier, consistently hard conversations, not just the nice conversations as well, because otherwise you're not going to fix stuff. Because I think you were saying before we started, like you like having difficult conversations and getting riled up. And I think sometimes in our function, people go, oh, well, we're just going to do exactly what the partnerships say. But you need to sort of give that feedback and actually create paper trails of it. So when we try and target clients, we've got a great, massive pharmaceutical client that makes millions and millions of pounds. And the patent litigator goes, oh, they're not interested in knowing anyone else in the business. And everyone goes, oh, don't bother speaking to him because it's only patent litigation. But it's all been hearsay, but no one's gone, why haven't we won more work? And say, well, and we've got it in writing and we've basically put on our CRM, CRP does not think it's got anywhere to go and has confirmed it's got nowhere to go, then stop bothering with it then. But if you don't have that paper trail, then you're going to perpetuate this old thing, he's a bad partner and he's not very good at cross-sell. So actually just start knocking them out, because then the data shows thingy doesn't want to play with others. And then you can't avoid that because it's written in the data.
You make it transparent, you make this whole thing very transparent.
This is where things like client feedback programs can be a really good unlock for that, particularly if you do it properly, which lots of organisations don't. It becomes a bit of a marking your own homework if done wrong. But if you do a proper client feedback program, the unlock for further business potential is massive, and you can address relationship issues. You know, some clients have the same client partner, but given the choice, they'd have somebody else, anybody else, no one else, right? So I think getting that right, using it as a proper objective assessment of the relationship, are we leaving work on the table, why are we leaving work on the table? I think that level of quite mature analysis of the relationship is often found wanting in a lot of professional services firms.
But that lets you target where you put your resource as well. Yeah. So if you start going, burying your head in the sand and trying to go after something that frankly isn't there, then you're never going to make the headway. Yeah. So actually the data has got to be key. We've got so much data at our disposal nowadays. And we were talking recently about, if you could have something in your team that you haven't got now, what would you have? I had somebody that understands, can interpret and do something with data. Because we've got tons and tons of it, and we just don't know what to do with it and don't know how to use it effectively.
I would disagree slightly, because I work in a management consulting firm, so we've got loads of people who are really good with data.
Can I have some?
Yeah, I can think of 5 or 6 people I would give you right now. But the challenge there is it's overplaying your hand, right? So you spend too much time in the data, you end up with a different set of outcomes. So we have a revenue and growth practice. They're very, very good. They do some incredible work. And we have a propensity model in our organisation where we've looked at the data. We understand where our best chances for expanding our work actually lie. But when you start putting in success percentages around where your work's going to come from, you can discourage people from finding new clients. It's easier to win work from an existing client, so you're not really building your world much broader. So everything has its opportunities and everything has its challenges. So too much data can be a bad thing as well. Some of it is purely relationships, and actually in my role, one of my biggest marketplaces is actually my own people. I say to my colleagues, they're not going to sell you into a client because you haven't sold yourself to them. You've turned up with 25 slides of crap, bored them for half an hour, and you haven't told them why this makes their proposition richer, why this would matter to the client, why it would make a compelling conversation, you've just bored them for 30 minutes. So they think you're going to go and bore their client for 30 minutes. So you have to think about your internal marketplace as well in some cases. And I think there is a very rights-based perspective that just because client A buys from you, they're going to buy that and the other from you, and they're not.
For fear of being doing a bit of a rah-rah cross-pitch AI champion.
Well, they'll thank you for it.
I know.
It's taking you long enough.
I know.
Do you want to put your lanyard on?
One of the issues that we have, bear in mind, we're, like Will was saying, we're a relatively small firm, one building, actually one floor, pretty small. I had a partner who came to me and said, and my managing partner, which was delightful of him, said, I'm not happy with the marketing and the BD support I'm getting from your team, Peter. I want a meeting. Thankfully, my managing partner, before I sort of jumped in and said, you might want to rephrase that. Let's have a conversation about what you do need. Had the conversation. The partner's opening shot to me was, Peter, what do I do? To which the managing partner, before I said anything, said, I don't know what you do, and the people down the desks from you don't know what you do. There's so much of a massive assumption that everybody knows what everybody else does. And they think the solution is, okay, Peter, can you get your team to write me an email that tells the firm what we do? Because that'll answer it. And actually, what the real problem that we found was that we're putting out so much content as a business. I mean, it was just going into the ether, and we had no idea where it was going, whether it was getting to the right people. And actually, what we did is we paired it right back, and Crosspitch AI has helped us. We've started to target where our content is going. Not only is it going to the right people internally, but as a result, it's going to the right people externally. So rather than try and be everything to everybody, we've really focused down on what we're doing and tried to talk to the right people about the right things. It's making a massive difference.
You are the only one that we paid to put on the panel today as well. It's great.
Clearly.
You haven't? I must have missed that.
That's how you bought your new shoes, isn't it?
Partner called Richard that turned up and had a go at you.
Before the age of AI, we had this challenge about, I don't know how to sell myself and people don't know how to sell one another. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I just got a one page for each and every practice called Work We Want to Win. And it's like work types, value size, where the work comes from, who are our current sort of top 5, 10 clients and who are the top 5, 10 clients that we want. Did that for the entire, for the 15 practices that we have. And then for every new lateral partner, but also with everyone within BD, it was in part of the reading packs of a handful of different things. And it's enough to be dangerous because everyone else must have this as well. Maybe it's not just us, but some people go, oh, we thought Taylor Westing just did IP work or just did real estate or just patents. And I'm pretty certain if you asked a patent, real estate or whoever else partner, they go, yeah, we're really good at real estate. And then we do other stuff because they just focus on their specialist subject and we just know enough to be dangerous. So if you said name a patent client from the real estate partners, they go, I don't know, no idea. So it's those sorts of things that are just little nudges which make somebody, again, tiny, marginally better. So in the lift, they can say, oh, we're also really good at X, Y, or Z, or some of the other clients, because it's really important to be a student of your own firm as well as your client. And if you don't have that, you can't get AI to fix that for you. You just have to have a bit of get up and go about it. And I think a lot of our partners are like, well, I'm really good at law, but they also need to sort of lean in a bit and think a little bit more.
To Barney's point, surely that is more about knowing the client, because then you can, if you know that the client then has a need for the other areas of the business, then that's where you sell them in.
Well, you will have, in any organisation, you have your natural business developers. They're usually pretty poor practitioners, so which is why they've decided to become good business developers. And mercifully so, because we don't need more good practitioners, we need more good business developers. But they have an innate ability to sit down with a client and give them a damn good listening to. They're usually the people that don't come to you wanting a pack of whatever that could choke a donkey to sit there and bore the client. They're like, I'm going to use these 2 things and that one thing in the right proportion. I'm going to come back with a very clear understanding of what's going on in this organisation, what's going on with the individual. We talk a lot about selling to the individual. Individuals have motivations of their own, and that can be the difference between work won and work lost. But if you understand that, by dint of being a good business developer, you will have a pretty good understanding of your organisation. I mean, Alex Partners is 3,500 people. That's not that big in the grand scheme of things. And those people are really good at BD. They know enough people to pick up the phone and go, this client has a supply chain issue, this client has an AI challenge, this client's got a growth problem. They've usually got all manner of those things going on at the moment. So who are your best people? And this is what we go and we put together something compelling based on what they've told us, not based on what we want to tell them. And it's very, very simple. And we because professional services firms employ a lot of smart people, our innate tendency is to make everything so much more complicated than it needs to be. And we build structures and processes that just make everything difficult, and it's actually not that hard at the end of the day.
That's interesting. One of the big things we always hear, and you guys can comment on it as well, is that lawyers don't do it, or consultants don't do it, professional service don't want to do the cross-selling piece because it's got selling in it. You know, it's got that salesy, transactional sort of ring to it. It sounds like you've just described people in your business that get that whole thing.
There's a great quote from one of my colleagues. It's people confuse selling with selling. Right, actually, if you focus on building relationships, developing an understanding of your own organisation, an understanding of your clients, you treat people decently, you try and be helpful, you will sell. If you try and sell, you probably won't sell. And that's the bit that people have a natural aversion to, because sales feels grubby, it's a bit vulgar. It's like, well, how the fuck are you affording your Ferraris and your yachts? I mean, it's not coming because people are just good with charity. So I think that's another tendency to overcomplicate things.
Have you had that, Sadie, in your
Yeah, very much
experience?
so. And I think the other mistake we make in law firms is we think everybody can do everything. So you get somebody who is actually really good at business development, and suddenly they end up on the leadership team, and they're bogged down in day-to-day people management. And actually what you want is to just accept and recognise they are your rainmakers. I hate that term, but they are your rainmakers. They are out there every day. They can sell snow to the Eskimos. They're brilliant at what they do. You're right, they're rubbish practitioners. They're a PI claim waiting. No, they are. They're a claim waiting to happen often. And they get a dirty name in the business somehow. And they're often at one end of the spectrum as well, just saying, the ones that I know anyhow. So they are a little bit more tricky to deal with. But you need them. And then you need the people at the other end who are the brilliant practitioners who actually break out in a cold sweat if they have to speak to a client face to face. But you still need them. And I just don't think enough law firms have really got to grips with the idea that it doesn't have to be everybody is equal. And because they are compensated in a certain way, again, I just think we need to get much more sophisticated in the way that we recognise the value people bring to the business. And that, I think, starts with profitability on clients, because you're really amazing practitioners who are solving that gnarly issue. They don't give a stuff about the price. They're just going to pay rate card, maybe over and above, because they want it sorted. But you know, they didn't bring the work in, but the person who brought the work in is the one that gets all the kudos. And I just think that's a little bit wrong still to this day, but I don't know, who am I?
You got the same?
Yeah, and I was just thinking about it because I totally agree with it, and I think that it's really easy to come up with lots of problems. Right, we sit here and go, "God, we've got all these problems," but then it's like, well, what are some of the solutions potentially? And right at the beginning, the word trust was banded around. We spoke about trust, and in any form of life, trust is really, really difficult to gain and really, really easy to lose. And we see that played out daily, almost, in what we do. And we talk about our client and my client and clients of the firm. And one of the things we've tried to do is, in effect, we're putting in place an internal SLA. So what are the expectations of you as an individual if you have some work referred to you by one of your partners? And it bluntly is, you will treat that client as you would treat your own, in effect. Which is great on paper. Really, really, really difficult, unless you deal with all of these other things, to actually put into practice. So then how do you measure it? How do you make it better? How do you improve things? So I just think that you've got to look at small wins, get the right people doing the right things. I call it right people, right jobs. And it's not just about having the right lawyers being out there doing the BD and doing the marketing and doing the rainmaking and the other lot sitting at their desk and transacting and doing that. It's about your own teams having the right people in the right places as well, because they've got to influence. They've got to make change as well. And you've got to pick the right people to make those changes with. We bang our heads against a brick wall when we try and we see some people who, to Sadie's point, they're brilliant and they've got some fantastic clients who we really should be able to open out. but they are not the right person to open that client out. And having a conversation with that individual and saying, in effect, from an account management perspective, you are not the right person to make this client go from a £10 million client to a £20 million client is really, really, really tough. But if you don't want the business, if you want the business to grow, they're the conversations you've got to have, I think.
Do you guys see any other sort of barriers? We've talked about remuneration. I've heard you mention it before, that horrible word, rainmaker, but are they a barrier, of people seeing them as a barrier sometimes in terms of cross-selling at professional service firms?
I don't think they're a problem. I think they're actually a bit of a blessing right now, but they are quite generational.
Right.
And I think in the next 10 years or so, most of them will have stopped working. And I'm not necessarily sure that the succession for those people who are built that way is necessarily there. I think the advent of technology, I think the changing face of the business landscape, the fact that we've started to over-metricate certain things in professional services firms encourages people to stick to the stuff that's measured, because that's what drives their compensation. I just think the muscles are massively underdeveloped. So when these people go off and play golf full-time, you've got to find a way to fill in the gaps. I mean, we've got people at Alex Partners who are bringing in $120 million worth of work a year, right? When they decide to retire, that's a problem, because it's hard to know where that's going to come from, which is why you need accounts, which is why you need to think about clients completely and across the board and how you're going to start catering for that over the longer term. So I don't think they're a problem. I think they're a unique species.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are a bit of a dying breed, because they hunt as a solo act often. I think I've only come across a couple of rainmakers who buddied up and used to go off and hunt together, but they tend to hunt alone, and it's not in their interest for them to bring on a successor often, because they want the kudos of being the biggest rainmaker in the firm. And again, I just think, I agree, it's got to be a combination of things, trying to hang on to a few rainmakers, thinking about who they are and trying to build out skills, key account programs that help institutionalise and widen client relationships, and we all have a big role to play in that, to support and help with the training. There's so much training out there, isn't it, about how to become a...
But I think that's part of the challenge. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think you're right in terms of training people. I don't think some of these skills are trainable.
No,
I think some of these skills are innate. It's a mindset, it's a proclivity, it's whatever you want to call it. And finding people who you can make more like you is actually a very hard thing, because for a lot of the people who are really, really good at it, it just comes naturally to them. They're much more sort of oriented towards people, they're better relationship builders, they tend to be able to just sort of juggle lots of different things. As, we talked about, they're not necessarily deep technicians. Turning somebody who's a really deep technician in a particular topic into a really good relationship builder is hard. It's really, really hard, and I don't have an answer for it. Sorry, Pierre, it's just a problem. But I think it's something that we need to think about, how we professionalise selling, stop being ashamed of it as an activity, recognising that it is what oils the commercial gears of an organisation, and maybe more people like the people in this room whose jobs it is to do this stuff, give them more access to clients, give them more account management responsibilities. You don't have to be a practitioner to be an account manager, and oftentimes we get those two roles confused.
I was going to say, it touches upon the BD and marketing role to do the listening, do that piece where you understand the client better, and then you can marry up the fee earners, right?
There's a bit that I think we often miss, particularly with lawyers. And lawyers, it's their job to get stuff right, to never get it wrong. We're fortunate in the world that we live in that we can try stuff, we can have a go, we can, and actually sometimes there is no right answer. One of the things I try and say to the partners who are a bit reluctant, maybe not necessarily where I am now, but wherever I've been, is give it a go. Start with something that you feel quite comfortable with, that you think you can do, that might make you feel better, that comes across as a win at the end. See how that feels and go from there, because so often we think, we talk about turning a 10 million into a 20. How's the knee?
Sore.
We go from turning 10 million into a 20. Well, hang on a minute. Let's turn 100,000 to, let's start with 100 to 110. Start with something smaller. Start with something that makes us feel better, that we are going to succeed with. And then all of a sudden it starts to get some momentum and to grow. Because too often we think, actually, what we're talking about with cross-selling is making a bigger client enormous. Actually, if we move everything by 1%, then we've done a brilliant job.
I think there's a point in that. I think about it a lot. Alex Partners, we undergo quite a deep psychological assessment when they're hiring us. Some of us manage to sneak through, but on the whole, it churns out a certain mentality for whom the act of selling is psychologically quite complicated. So therefore, the process of selling needs to be complicated as well, because otherwise, why is it so hard? And we do lots of exercises. We have courses that we run. I teach on one of them. We get people to send like 5 emails to a client they haven't spoken to in a while. The last one I was on, somebody got a $500,000 piece of work out of one email, right? And the simplicity of it just seems to just freak people out. It's like, surely this should be harder. Surely I need to put together a 300-slide deck, and then no, just say hi, and they're like, oh, great, lovely to hear from you. By the way, I've got a problem, right? And it's just little simple things. I think you're absolutely right, Peter. Just many small things can make many big things happen, but because it's psychologically difficult, people want it to be technically complicated, and it just doesn't have to be.
We lent quite a lot into the Rainmaker genome study that DCM Insights team did. So alongside Rhea, we were sort of some of the anchor people that took the original survey. Some people might love it, some people might hate it, but one stat was that sort of 50 to 60% of professional services people do not allocate time on a daily basis to BD. So first and foremost, change that minute little behaviour, and then also knock out a couple of emails, and you'll see what magic could happen. And the study then came out, there was like 3 core tenets of sort of commit to BD, connect with people and create opportunities. So there's so many little behaviours that can make actually a really big difference. And even if you're a bookish, introverted tax partner, no offence to tax people, sort of, but even if you did 2 or 3 marginal little things, you could see like an uptick. And if you sort of lent really super hard into it, you could see a massive uptick. And those partners who sort of just do it naturally, so they were chatting to one of the partners I'm thinking of exactly was sort of saying to some of the guys who'd just been made up that, oh, well, I'm not sure who I should email. And he went, well, knock it out to this person, this person, this person. But what if they don't reply? And he went, send it to some other people. And he went, I've like lost track of the amount of emails I've sent out trying to get work because I'm busy doing all the work that I have won. And he's like top equity, like Maseratis and all sorts. And these 2 lads are going, oh, what happens when I break out of the fixed equity membership pool? So just follow and do some of the little basic bits.
It's Peter's point, isn't it? It's about them worrying that they're going to fail at something, not get a response back. I mean, yeah, God, the amount of emails I send, tell you.
And I'm not responding to any of them, Will, as a matter of principle.
Yeah. Goes into my archive, auto archive.
That's just to my wife, and she doesn't respond. Okay, we're probably short on time, so last question really for you all, and this could be really good for you, Sadie, because 9 days in at a new gig. If you were to design a sort of cross-selling strategy from scratch, what's the one sort of cornerstone that you might advise everyone here on?
Well, maybe we can make this a bit of a build. I was just thinking about kind of a takeaway for you all, and if I've learnt something in my little time at TLT, we're about to launch a sales initiative, and the partner who's sponsoring it. So I think first and foremost, you do need top-down sponsorship. It makes a big difference. Don't just think that you can do it on your own, because it goes into the ether and disappears and never happens anywhere. Is make sure you are really fully engaged with learning and development, or whoever does that side of the business. All right. I'm really sorry if there's some L&D professionals in the room, but I don't understand why you hate us all so much, because it seems to me like you really do. I don't get it.
Just you, Sadie.
Is it me?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Do they all like you as well?
You guys love me.
Oh, it's just me then. Bugger. I don't understand it though. It's like there's some dark art to what the training the partners get. I'm like, what the hell? Sorry, no, it's not a dark art. You are sending a very expensive sales consultant in to teach them how to sell. Might work, might not. What bothers me about it, I don't want to make this negative, but it is that the sales consultant goes home and they leave us trying to pick up the pieces, and we've literally no idea what was said, what they were told to do. So, God bless the partner at TLT. He's gone, no. This has got to be fully engaged, and he's kind of got L&D and the BD team together, and he said, no, I want a sales approach, a sales hub, a sales academy. And I think that's going to make a big difference. So that would be my little takeaway, to say, make sure you make L&D your friends, if you can.
There we go. L&D your friends. Peter, you got a bit of advice?
I'd say don't underestimate the scale of the behaviour change challenge. I think for me it's, seek out the ones that you think can do it, that have got the right traits, the right behaviours, the right characteristics. Concentrate on them. Don't worry about the ones that don't want to do it, because they won't be changed. And you got better things to do with my day. Certainly, I feel like I've got that. I'd rather work with people that want to be worked with and want to be supported and helped. So, but then don't scrimp on that behaviour change piece. Really work hard on it. Get the behaviours right. Get the people working right in the right way. Get the right characteristics. Get collaborative people, because ultimately, cross-selling is about collaboration. So if you've got somebody who's not collaborative in that position, you're never going to survive. You're never going to make change. So that would be mine, I think, is concentrate on the behaviour change and get the right people in place.
Yeah, the collaboration, again, doing my research, there's another article that I'll quote as well. It talked about rivers and canals, actually, and at professional service firms, lots of firms take that river approach where you just meander along, take the path of least resistance. But actually, a canal can be really, really useful, like the Panama Canal, I gave the example. It took loads of effort and loads of millions of dollars to build, but actually ships can go up it now in 2 weeks instead of 5 months. The collaboration piece is all built around that, if that analogy makes any sense to anyone. James, what would your bit of advice?
I think just get decent quality data. Like, we've got some analysts and we've invested heavily into our CRM system, but one of the things that we had before either of those two things was, again, friends with finance as well as L&D, is a spreadsheet of all of the clients, top to bottom. So you've got client name, CRP, total revenue to date, and then all of the different practices. And we call it winning white space. But you know what it actually is? When there's not a monetary figure in that thing under employment, you say, well, have we thought about telling Google that we do employment work? That's all it is. It's just looking at where the data points are and where we aren't currently doing work for clients that exist already. But good data is massively helpful, because once you work out what you get the tools and you get people trained up, you've got to work out where to point them. Because I did 20 years of professional services last week. That was my milestone, because I started when I was 18. But I've seen so many business plans where people go, we're going to go for Google, we're going to go for Apple. And you're like, behave. Like, everyone just goes great big shiny companies. But actually, if you looked at JD Faucets and Rivets or something like that, who's like already £1 million client, and we could make double that revenue. So we actually have to sort of look what's right in front of our face and just look at the proper data and work out where we're going to point these people. Because so much of the revenue growth is already within the businesses that you're at. Sure, throw some stuff at Google and see if something sticks as well, because you need that mixed diet. But just look at stuff that's already in the four walls of your building.
Building a good plan. Barney, what would you add to that?
I think they're all great points. I think the one thing we as marketing and business development people really need to think about is about what our job actually is. And I think about this a lot. I think we, at our worst, have become publishing houses and just think that constantly churning content is going to unlock magic. We are built differently to a lot of the people we work with, and I think our job is to be their coach, is to be their courage, it's to push them and nudge them, to help them think about things that just aren't apparent to them. I'm very anomalous wherever I work, but at Alex Partners in particular, but that gives me a certain degree of license to say things that other people don't say. And sometimes it's a really, really simple thing that smart people don't see, right? We talk about common sense. The most common thing about common sense is it ain't that common, right? And I think really we have tried to make our jobs look proper, because that puts parameters around them and convinces ourselves that we work very hard. But our job is to be the coach to a bunch of people who don't know how to do what we know how to do. I think if we focus on that, bring L&D with us, not you because they don't like you, but where I work, and I think finding those obvious nudges and those obvious opportunities and just giving people a push, a nudge, and sometimes a bloody great shove, I think that will start to build you the stories that will embolden other people to follow, because they're competitive people, and if Jeff's doing something, then Margaret will want to follow inevitably. We've all had that call where I hear somebody's doing something brilliant, I want some of that. But those stories don't create themselves, so it's up to us to create them, and then that starts to have a little bit of a flywheel effect. And then suddenly you've got cross-selling happening without even trying. I think if you try too hard, you're really going to fail a lot of the time.
Good advice.
There we go, people. Done. Plan for everyone. I'm not going to summarise all of that, apart from the dick bit. Has anyone got any questions in the audience to any of the points raised, panel members? Got a question down there. Have we got a roving mic, or are we just projecting?
It should be a roving mic. It's not really a question, it's more an observation around the role of leadership in changing some of this. And by leadership, I don't mean law firm leadership, I mean our own departments. I just tell you a little story. We've got a client feedback program. The person goes out, does the client feedback, gathers the information. And by the way, a lot of the feedback is, we want to see more of your firm. That then goes into a black hole because that person doesn't feel the responsibility to make sure something happens with it. It goes on to the client teams read it, they do or do not action it. I just think as leaders of the function, we need to join people up a lot more than perhaps we do. I was talking to somebody earlier about working at a US law firm, and now they're saying about stay in your lane. It's a phrase I absolutely detest because actually it doesn't make you a good business developer if you're staying in your lane, because you only know your space, you have your responsibility, and that's the job I'm going to do. And I think as leaders, we just need to encourage more people to step out of the lane and take ownership for owning some of this. You know, we're quick to say it's the lawyer's problem if the cross-selling's not happening, but actually there's a lot we can do as marketing and business development people to actually change that and actually take ownership. And, you know, James, who I used to work with, I love the title origination because it implies you're actually going out winning some work. You know, we all should do more of that and take ownership for it, rather than expecting lawyers to change their behaviours. We've all worked with them long enough to know it's a mammoth task.
Yeah.
I think that's really important because we keep a lot of our role is we've got to go and make everyone, like, make the partners go and feel uncomfortable by doing uncomfortable things. But if we don't change it and then get some feedback from a client listening and then actually make things uncomfortable ourselves, then we're sort of saying go off and like put your feet to the fire, but I'm going to keep myself over here. So I mean, it might not be great for like sort of career longevity in some shops, but that means you're possibly in the wrong shop, right? Because I'm not here to sort of, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. And great if you want to keep paying me and keep me at the business, but I want to try and grow and push things forward. And I thought that's what you did because that's sort of what happened in interviews and when people hire me. But I think it's very important for us to actually like make things a bit uncomfortable for ourselves and actually like strive a little bit more. Because if we literally just sort of do busy work and what did you call the colouring in people earlier? Like we can just do colouring in and it's a great career and it will last everyone through to retirement, but that's not really what we're here for. So I think we need to all just strive and sort of make things a bit uncomfortable for ourselves as well, because that's really how you're going to push things going forward.
It's remarkable how pleased people are when you do the job you're supposed to do in an organisation, right? I mean, that sounds like a glib thing, but once you start telling people what they should be doing, you will often find that you become much more valuable to the organisation. I remember when I joined Freshfields, someone said to me, you know, the lawyers here are brilliant, they can do our jobs. And after about 2 weeks, I said, I understand why you think that, because you keep asking them to. You know, what do you want to do? What are you trying to do? It's like, well, why don't you tell me what I should be doing? And oftentimes people just latch onto what they know, what's familiar, what might have worked before. And if you go away and ask them to come up with what their marketing should look like, it's going to be a lot of events, it's going to be content, it's going to be all those kinds of things. That's not our job. Our job is to move things forward and really challenge them. I agree with you 100%, James.
Can I ask a question? I just wanted, because of what we were just talking about, I want to understand, I'm from KPMG originally and grew up there, and then moved to A&O Sherman. And when I got there, my job was client relationship manager. And I want to understand what prevents BD more so in law firms, I'm now at TLT, going out and meeting the clients. Because when I joined A&O Sherman, I used to get asked, where are you going? Every day I go in and go back out. And my response was, I'm going out to see the client, to do client feedback, to find out who all the people are at the client that you've given me. And that is what I thought I was supposed to be doing as a BD, because at KPMG, a business development manager was told to go into the client and get passed to their office. That's what you do as BD. So being at A&O Sherman, I've never really thought about this, so just listening to what you were just saying about origination and the role that you've got. What do you think the blockers are? BD doing more client, perhaps they do in other organisations, but at TLT we don't really, I haven't really met many clients. I've been there 9 months. So I'm just trying to think, like,
I'll try and change that.
How we can change that.
How many times have people asked to go with the client? I think, is one thing. So a few times I've gone, oh, can I come along?
Yeah.
And they could be like, don't be silly. But if you keep asking, a bit like when I said about the partner that just kept sending stuff out until people relinquish and say, yeah, go on then. And then obviously if you go to try and add value. So it's just sort of like volunteering and try and get stuck in. There's so many client drinks and things like that. So start turning up to those things, and then people go, oh, you don't work in IP or tax. You're actually an interesting human to speak to. All of those sorts of things. And so that's sort of slowly but surely. But I think that's definitely one of the things. But also that you get partners that are advocates of you. So start with those people, and then also if you start doing a decent job, some of the partners start doing your own PR for you. So if they go, oh, Thingy came to my event last week and she was fantastic and actually helped open up this door, then you'll be the hottest ticket in town, and then people will be asking you for sort of breakfast, lunches, dinners all the time.
Changing the mindset of the partners. I mean, I did go to an event not long ago, and I managed to get into an event and then got asked to pour the wine.
It's definitely not happening going forward.
It comes back to what James was saying. It's like find yourself in the right firm.
Yeah.
You know, it's about being in the right firm with the right culture, with the right leadership.
I think change the mindset because they're not because people haven't actually said I'm here and I can add value. You brought me in for a reason. So I can pour the wine, but I'm going to go to the GC that you haven't got a very good relationship with and have a chat, which I did. So.
But that leadership is super, super important. I've worked with Mark quite a while ago, and I remember I used to come up to you sometimes and go, Chief, I've got an idea. And I thought I was giving you a problem, and you went, go on then. And I was like, So you then sort of went and told me to go and then crack on and follow on and do those things. So if you don't have people at the top, so it's all of us need to actually make sure that we're giving up other people opportunities. And sometimes it could be, I should be going to that event, but why don't you sub somebody in to help their growth and development as well? Because they're not all there just to be sort of colouring in people.
I think air cover is a massive thing, personally. So as a CMO, as a leader, if I've got my team going out and doing things, great. If the partner comes to me and says, excuse me, but I'm like, yep. And?
That comes back to Barney's point about relationships as well, doesn't it? So if you can build that relationship with certain partners, they will take you externally on meetings as well.
Well, I think this is part of the real problem at the end of the day. I think a lot of professional services people, often lawyers, I think are actually afraid of their clients. You know, they serve at the whim of their clients, and the chances of them displeasing their clients are quite high, and then suddenly they've either got to go and find a new one or replace some revenue lost. I don't think it's a relationship of equals a lot of the time. So any additional human component added to that, who's not a lawyer as well, so you know there's a risk factor there. I think that can be really scary, and that's the fundamental problem. I think you've kind of, as everyone said, get the sponsorship to do it, be persistent, do it well, and then people will start to see the consequences of that. But in my experience in professional services firms, no one's ever going to give you the permission to do it. That's the challenge. So it's a bit of backing yourself and finding the right people. And if it goes wrong, blame Peter.
One of my old managing partners said, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness.
One of Sadie's mantras.
Julie McConnell, sorry,
I feel so it's a similar vein actually, and it's now more of an observation, but I do think it's a lot about leadership and the leadership encouraging it. So at the moment I'm really encouraging the team to go out and about and to go to industry events, to chat to people on the plane, you know, to be a push to go to IBA. And a few people have said, oh, are you organising the event? I'm like, no, I'm meeting law firms, I'm organising the referrals, I'm going with the managing partner. And you just do it, and you just don't agree, you just go ahead and you show them the value you can bring. Organising events yourself, suggest things that you would go to and just get the budget to do it. So I think we should all be doing more of that, and I think it's interesting, the right people, right jobs. A lot of us are the right people, and we're, you know, the right job for us is, some of us is to be going out and to doing what we do and showing them how to do it properly.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was more of an observation.
One of the things I like about the consulting industry is we actually do client work as well in what we call corporate services and whatever your equivalent of that is. So if there's a particular client problem that we can help out with, we become billable, and that helps enormously.
One more?
One more question I think we've probably got time for.
Bridget?
Yeah, it was just more of an observation really. I actually think a lot of PMs don't really know their clients very well. And so to your question as well, I think if you've got an angle and you really, you know, you've got sort of a reason for going in and you know you can sort of prove that you've done your research and you know the client probably better than the person who you want to go with, then I think that's a very, very good, sort of excuse to go. And I think it does prove the value, but it's doing your homework. And I think that's the whole challenge for people who are in sort of client relationship roles. I want to do some work for a client. Well, have you sort of surfaced the client issue? What is the issue? What's the angle? Why should I take you to see my client? And so I think there's a lot of sort of ignorance around that thing. So I think people need to do their homework first. But I think we've also got, everybody in the room has got a sort of a responsibility to really understand the client well, and then we can get a seat at the table. Certainly, and that's what I've done in my career.
Thank you. That's probably a wrap. We've taken up enough of your good people's time. Thank you very much to the panel. James's hair again. I just feel like
So thank you so much for a brilliant panel. Hopefully useful, open and honest as ever. So great panel. Thank you so much, guys. And you went on a bit there, so I was joking. It's great because it means there's only 4 minutes for me, so you'll all be delighted about that as well. So actually what happened just under a year ago, lots of CMOs that we work with started coming to us and saying, listen, our managing partners are asking us how we can use AI and how we can develop AI, because everyone's talking about AI into what we're doing from a BD and marketing perspective. So they said to us, is there anything you guys can do and anything you can build that would help us? And we said, well, what are kind of the biggest issues at the moment? And we heard unanimously that cross-selling was a big thing at the law firms and consultancies we work with. And we said, well, we'll see if we can try and help with that a little bit then. So we are lucky to have a really, really clever group of people up in Passle HQ out in Oxford, led by our CTO, John Bosley. So we went and challenged them to see what we could kind of do. And this was something we heard, and I'm going to skip through these slides really quickly because I think the panel actually mentioned most of these. But we hear this so often from our clients. If our consultants and lawyers knew what their colleagues were able to deliver, our clients would potentially buy it. But they often don't know that. We often hear this a lot. So someone emails, lawyer consultant emails the whole firm and says, does anyone know another firm that does this area or of the law or consultancy? And they come back going, we do that thing. We've told you so many times that we do that thing, and you're referring it out to another firm. Thank God I have this one in Sadie. So about 6 months or so, Tom and Adam Elgar and I went and Sadie gave up a morning and afternoon of her time, and we picked her brains around cross-selling. This is something she told us. Cross-selling is the cheapest, fastest and easiest way to grow revenue. So we set about seeing if we could do something to help solve that problem. And as Will mentioned lots of times, there's 2 things we kept hearing from Sadie that day and from all our other clients. Awareness and trust stops cross-selling. We obviously have to add a third one in, which is the word dicks to that apparently as well. So awareness, trust, and people being dicks are the 3 things that stop cross-selling. And what we heard again from our clients when they did create insights, and Peter mentioned a little bit, or thought leadership, and I had a meeting with the head of content globally for financial services at one of the big 4, and she was telling me that basically they create all this content, it takes absolutely ages, they spend so much money on it, and then they just send it to everyone, and then nobody opens it at all because it's not relevant to most of them. So she was saying they track and they've got about 2 to 3% open rate, which is absolutely horrendous for all the work they do. We built Cross-Pitch AI to try and help with that, and Peter mentioned it very kindly a little bit earlier on. And all we do is we use a little bit of AI. So you can imagine here you've got these different people. Maybe they're all in the same office, maybe they're in different offices. Peter was talking about everyone in their office doesn't know each other. At one of the Magic Circle firms we were with the other month, we were saying people in the different offices or the different companies don't know each other, and they said the people in that office and that office down there don't know each other. So how do we drive that awareness and trust? So really simple. What we do is we analyze every piece of content that goes onto your website. You could be using the Passle Thought Leadership platform to do that. You could be using Lexblog, Sitecore,
WordPress, whatever you do to create your content. And what we do is we analyze each piece of content using AI, and we analyze the profiles of all the people across your firm, and we start to work out, well, who is that actually relevant to across the firm. So in this example, it said that it's relevant to Alice and Patrick and Penny, but it's not relevant to Molly and Schmelz and Tracy. And in the back end, you can, if you want, control this. You can set a little threshold, sending threshold, so it's set at 70% here. Maybe you want to up it to 90% and keep it really, really relevant to those people. If you want to add people who aren't on it, you can do that. But typically after 1 or 2 sends, we've got 26 clients signed up in this now. Typically, they're just fully automated after the first couple, so it's fully automated and just runs in the background. So you publish a piece of content and it goes out to the 52 people that it's relevant to. And what Alice receives, she receives something that looks a little bit like this. So we've taken the article, we summarize it down for her into about 80 to 100 words and tell her what that article is all about and who it's written by. So hopefully by reading that, Alice, in 20, 30 seconds, she can understand the point of the article and she can see who at the firm wrote that for her, for the firm then. And then she can do a few other things. She can click through if she wants and reads the whole thing. She can connect with Oscar, the person who wrote it. She can push it off to LinkedIn, or she can start to tell her clients about it as well then. So she's driven that awareness of Oscar and she's understanding what he's talking about and what he's thinking about. So she can ping it out to a client via email. Again, we use a little bit of AI to create that email for her, but she can obviously edit that. Or maybe she's got a meeting with them, so she can speak to them in the meeting the next day about it. Or maybe she WhatsApps with her clients. Or maybe Alice plays golf with them. So however she meets her clients, she can go and tell them about that little nugget that she found out from Oscar Welton. So instead of getting these 78,000 unopened emails, you get that one relevant email that's really relevant to you and hopefully then relevant to your clients as well. And because it's relevant, I actually took not the big four rate of 2 to 3%. I did some research and apparently the industry average is 18%. Loads of our clients don't even measure the internal open rates. I don't know if you guys all do. That's the industry average. The ones I hear from clients that do measure is much, much lower than that. But because we're only sending the relevant content to the right people across the firms that we work with, across those 26 clients that we've signed up, the average open rate for cross-pitch AI is 42%. So totally game-changing. People are opening it. And it was 38% when we presented this at our event in New York a few months back. And it's creeping up because we think once people know what it's about, they know it's more likely to be relevant to them as well then. So we're really happy with that. And what happened then was our clients started saying, well, this is great. We've got the 42% open rate, but how can we really start to understand how we're connecting the firm internally through our thought leadership and our insights and content? So we went back to the team up in Oxford to see what they could do to help us show those connections, because we were starting to connect these firms like they've never been connected before through that thought leadership and insight and content. So what they did was they built this, which is what we call our cross-selling intelligence map. And this is something we're about to launch very soon. And it's basically an interactive network diagram that shows how your firm is connected across individuals, offices, practices, and sectors across the firm. So it looks a little bit something like this. I can actually show you the latest live demo of it then as well. So if I bring this up and I click hopefully refresh, never do a live demo. So Tom Elgar always told me. That's what I learned actually seeing Tom Elgar doing live demos. So you can see here, you've all connected. This is actually live data from a client. We've just anonymized the offices and the names of the people. But basically what it does, you can see all the connections across the firm. So in this example, you can see, well, if they're interested in how the offices are connected, you can see that Chicago and New York and LA look pretty well connected, but Nashville's looking pretty lonely out here on the side then. If you want, you can even click in an individual, and you can click on all the individuals and see how each of them is connected and who they're connected to from across the firm. I say you can do this by individuals. If you want, you can go in and you can do it by practice group or by sector group. So here we've done the intellectual property team. So again, you can see where the different firms and different offices are connected through their insights and thought leadership. If I take that away, so intellectual property looks not too bad. If I click on litigation, you can see it's pretty sparse and not so well connected. So you can start to see where different parts of your firms are connected. Interestingly, Peter mentioned lateral hires earlier on. So when we brought this to CMOs, I think the most excited people we've seen are the managing partners and CEOs and senior leadership teams. So this ability to see in one shot how the firm is connected through their insights and thought leadership. So if you bring in a lateral hire, you can maybe see after a couple of months exactly how well integrated they're into the firm. Are they engaging in the content? Are they creating content and insights that other people are reading as well then? So you can get a real feel for that. We also have clients who are constantly merging, especially in the US, and lots of mergers going on. So how are those two firms starting to merger? So through the cross-sell intelligence map, you can start to look and understand how they're doing that. So that's kind of the cross-sell intelligence map. As I said, it's so easy to switch on, and that's one of the beauties of AI. It's not like a CRM project where you have to put in loads of data for months and months and months, or a new website project, and finally you launch it a year and a half or 2 years later. With AI, it's all there, so this is all publicly available information. It's insights that are published on your website already, it's the profiles that are already there, so you can pretty much switch it on immediately. And it's all fully automated then as well. And the great thing about that is you can start seeing those benefits in as little as 1 or 2 weeks. So that data I showed you was from the first 2 weeks of that client and using that data that they've seen. So really, really easy to launch. The best thing for our CMOs is the managing partners absolutely love it. So they can go and see this snapshot of how their firm is integrated, and the next thing might be looking at what can we do, how do we integrate that office better with Chicago and New York, and how do we get Nashville much more engaged in what we're doing. I did write notes and then I didn't even read any of them. As I mentioned, we've launched 26 clients, or we've signed up 26 clients in just a couple of months. We're really, really excited about this. A lot of them are the other side of the Atlantic, and what we would love to do is get double that number and get more across the UK as well. We call them our kind of early adopters, and with early adopters we give a much lower cost than we'll charge in the future, so that we can get loads and loads of feedback from those people to show us how we can enhance that product and develop over the next couple of years as well then. So for the next couple of months, next 2 months, we have early adopter pricing, so that we can hopefully encourage lots of firms to get on board and start benefiting from cross-pitch AI. If you're interested in that at all, go and speak to one of the team or message us, and we'd love to show you how easy it is to set up for your firm and how there's no tech, no project, no integrations needed to get going and seeing results immediately.
Peter can vouch for that. We launched within 45 minutes.
There you go.
True, isn't it? Yeah, we did.
Thanks, Peter. So listen, thank you again to our brilliant panel. I thought you were brilliant, really honest, really good information. Thank you to all of you for coming. I asked you to do a few things at the start. One was be interactive with lots of great questions at the end. The second was to hopefully take one little nugget of information away with you today that you can implement at your firms tomorrow, or on Monday morning if you're not going into the office tomorrow. And finally, we asked everyone to say hi to each other, to network, to introduce yourselves to each other if someone stood alone. So we do have drinks and some food at the back now, so hopefully you'll all join us and say hi to each other and meet some people you've not met before and understand their challenges and what they do. We often say these CMO Series live events are just like giant therapy sessions. So hopefully you'll get a little bit out of that. Just one final point. One client who we've worked with for years was speaking to one of my colleagues, Charles, yesterday or the day before, and they said, why do the Passle events stop so early now? They used to go on like really, really late. And we felt maybe it was just we're all getting a bit older, but we've decided to dedicate our time today. So we're going to stay late if you're still here to answer any questions you might have. Thanks again to our panel. Thanks to Natasha and Charlie and team for setting up.